Hello guys, this is Bodas Jumesi from Wisdom for Dominion, and in this video today we are going to be doing a book review, and it's no other book but The Burden of Freedom. Wow, this is absolutely the most important and the greatest book I've ever read. You absolutely have to read it. Why? Did you know that statistics, even just according to the US Inmates Bureau of Justice, at least 2/3 of prisoners who have been convicted, when released, return back to jail within 3 years, and a whopping over 77% of them return to jail after 5 years. So it's like these people, when they are given back their freedom, it's kind of impossible for them to manage it, and so they end up over 77% of them returning back to jail. But wait, let's not go that far to prisoners. Look at the case of the children of Israel. If you study their exodus from Egypt, when they were faced with challenges, many of them complained to Moses that it's better for them to go back and be slaves in Egypt. At least there they'll eat garlic and onions, and still that is far. If we come back to ourselves, many people today still prefer to have a job than to start a business. We are more scared at the idea of starting a business and owning a job or getting out on our own than just working in a comfortable 9 to 5 schedule. So the burden of freedom actually comes to enlighten you and I on this fragile topic called freedom. You know, in the past, even like I usually think freedom, we think of freedom as the liberty to do whatever you want to do, however you want to do it, without any restrictions. You know, the kind of teenage freedom we desire. Don't tell me what to do, don't tell me where to go. I want to live my life the way I want to live. But really, once you get into the burden of freedom, you will see that that is very far from freedom, because Dr. Myles Munroe makes you understand that freedom without law is complete anarchy. So in The Burden of Freedom, Dr. Myles Munroe talks of mainly 4 things, and the first is oppression, the second is deliverance, the third is responsibility, and the fourth is freedom. And he defines oppression as being unwillfully suppressed and restricted by an external force and command and being controlled to the point that you give up your own will and your own desire. So he says the objective of oppression is to break the spirit of the oppressed. And I was really surprised when he talks about the remedy for oppression, because he says everyone must be delivered of oppression, not just the oppressed but also the oppressor. For a total eradication of oppression, both the oppressor and the oppressed must be delivered, because the oppressed needs to be cleared of the thought that he's inferior, he has a low self-esteem. He needs to be cleansed of that low self-value and low self-worth, which is the typical case of most third world people today. And also the oppressor must be delivered, because he must get to start seeing the formerly oppressed as a normal and equal person and human like him. And so that is really a big thing that the world really ignores today. Probably the most important lesson which I think you will learn in The Burden of Freedom is that there is a difference between deliverance and freedom, because I think that is where a lot of confusion comes in. Many a times when we are delivered from something, we think that we have attained or we have entered freedom. Deliverance is simply being removed from an environment of oppression. The children of Israel were delivered from Egypt, but they didn't get into freedom until when they had changed their minds and entered Canaan, and that took them over 40 years, and that generation died without experiencing it. So deliverance is being taken physically out of the oppression, but freedom is when you're being taken psychologically and mentally out of the oppression. And so that may explain why most African countries like mine, even today, after over 50 years of deliverance from colonialism, we are still suffering from, like third world people, from poverty, from lack of industrialism, from all sorts of things. His third focus in this book is responsibility. He says and teaches that the price of freedom is spelled responsibility, and that is responsibility. So you can never enter freedom without being responsible. So most prisoners, when they leave prison, they have a difficulty becoming responsible because they have been enjoying free food, free cable, free housing, free everything, free clothing, and free care in the prison. But when they get out now, they need to start taking responsibility to pay their own bills, to provide for their own selves, and that becomes really tough. And also with the challenge of getting a job, they end up reverting back to their old ways, which lands them back in oppression in prison. And finally, his fourth main focus in this book is freedom. He makes us understand that freedom is the reason for which Christ has set us free. And so God created man for freedom. Freedom comes from free, dominate freedom. And so he encourages and charges us to make up our minds to pay the price, which is responsibility, so we can enter true freedom. So that's my short review of The Burden of Freedom. You can check in the video description below. I believe you'll find the link where you can get some copies. And in my opinion, this is the greatest book and most important book Dr. Myles Munroe ever wrote. And given that he's one of the greatest authors who ever lived, with over 60 books and 90% being bestsellers, then you must also admit then that it is one of the greatest books that has ever been written, if not the greatest in my opinion. So thank you so much for watching, and see you in my next video.